Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm joined by our usual co-hosts, Uncle Mark and Jason. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. And my bourbon.
And your bourbon.
He's an important guest.
I was totally going to make old fashions for tonight's show and didn't bother to stop and get the ingredients. Otherwise, I would have that instead of just whatever random beer was in my fridge, which happens to be a Sam Adams.
I'm super lazy. I'm drinking Buffalo Trace neat.
I mean,
code
that's,
for just Buffalo Trace, Yeah,
yes. It's just, I have Buffalo Trace and glass. Neat.
Which is
just a fancy
perfect.
Fancy word for Trace in glass.
Buffalo Trace, the official bourbon of Iron Sysadmin.
Yeah, right. I guess I'll have to get Buffalo Trace when I start
right?
making old fashions. That's you said that's bourbon, right? Yeah, I can make an old fashioned with bourbon.
Bourbon.
Hey, if it gets sponsorship money, so.
Yeah, right.
The struggle is that Buffalo Trace, at least in Pennsylvania, is the PS5 of bourbon. It can be difficult to acquire.
Not if they sponsor the show. We'll just have them pay us in Buffalo Trace.
And are the dogs on mic at this point?
Yes, they are. Your dogs are part of the show tonight. It's okay. We can live with that.
Daughter.
Dear daughter, please silence dogs. Find mute button. All right, folks. While Mark deals with his errant canines, we'll get the show rolling. What do you think? So last episode, which was 3 weeks ago, because last week I was in Raleigh and couldn't really, produce a show. I guess I could have like taken the mixer with me and I don't know, my whole computer and setup, but I think that would have been a pain in the butt. So anyway, we skipped to this week. Anyway, last show we talked about a whole bunch of cloud terminology, right? We went through, we used all the cloudy words, not the buzzwords, but the terminology to tell, folks who want to operate a cloud or be good citizens of a cloud or whatever, like what they're in for, what different terms mean, and we talked through what things are used for and whatnot. And we didn't really go too deep on any of it. So my thought is we're going to pick some of those topics and go a little bit deeper as we go on and make sort of a series out of this. So tonight, I forget if we talked about this as a term or not, but it is definitely one of the conversations you're going to have, like the very next conversation you're going to have after your boss comes to you and says, we should look at the cloud. It's going to be, how do we get our workloads to the cloud? And one of those terms is going to be lift and shift. Tonight we're going to talk about what that is, why it matters, why it may be a good choice or a bad choice depending on your use case, right?
I think we inferred the consequences of it, or at least I did because I'm snarky.
Yeah.
But I don't think we used the term or went into any actual explanation of what it is.
Right. So let's do that first. What is a lift and shift? Do either of you want to take a shot at that, or you want me to do it? You're always so talkative. Okay.
I have firsthand experience from when we did it at Merck, but I don't know if Jason wants to because I sometimes talk too much.
I have firsthand experience of old school lift and shift and the new cloud-based lift and shift, so I've done both.
Yeah, this is something that people may have done.
Let us know. Let us know.
We should
the answer now.
We should preface this with this. You may have already been through something very similar to what we're about to talk about when you went from physical to virtual, right? Is that what you meant when you said old school, Jason?
No, actually, I'm talking moving data centers, lifting the equipment and shifting it to the new data center.
Oh, okay.
So physical to physical, but I've also done physical to virtual, and I've done physical to cloud and virtual to cloud and cloud to cloud. So it's a reused term.
You and I worked together on physically moving it 30 feet across the data center.
Yes. Within a data center, between data centers. I've done city to city.
Talk about forklift upgrade.
Yeah. Some are fast, some are
all
slow.
All of us have done this type of work.
Yeah.
White House Station, New Jersey to Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, I've done similar with Merck's Linux footprint. So okay. Cool.
So anyway, what are we talking about, Jason? You want to take a crack at it?
Yeah, it's simply put, it's moving your servers, systems, applications, whatever whatever encompassing term you want to use, from one location to another, or from one medium to another. So in the case of like physical to virtual, you're moving from 10 servers in a rack that are running 50 apps to a single clustered VM system that runs all of those same apps and servers, but virtualized.
Right. So you can. I think the key there is, right, so you start with 10 physical servers that run 50 apps, you end up with 10 VMs that run the same 50 apps.
Right.
Right. You didn't change anything other than the underlying, layer one or whatever you want to call that.
Right. So a lift and shift generally is kind of one for one. So if you're moving physical to virtual, you're moving that server to a virtual server running the same software. You're moving from that other server to a virtual server running the same software. You're not really changing the architecture of it's not really, I'm not sure how to exactly put it. You're not changing the architecture of the application. The infrastructure itself is changing, but you're not changing what the app does. You wouldn't lift and shift and say move from a single server to a microservices based Kubernetes cluster with scalability. Like that's not a lift and shift.
That's a complete redesign. That's a redesign, re-architecture. Yeah. Yep. Which isn't necessarily what we're talking about tonight, but we'll probably touch on that a bit as we talk about the pros and cons of the lift and shift. You have more to add there, Mark? You look like you're itching to talk.
So, well, this sort of leaks into the next couple of topics, but on paper, and this is why I chuckle a little bit, the lift and shift to a lot of people will often look like the easiest and cheapest way to go.
Right.
That can be really friggin' deceptive.
It can be.
It is often, in fact, not, and we'll go into why a little later.
Yeah, we'll dive into that.
Lift and shift is going to, for someone who thinks in classic data center, classic single pizza box systems, or even regular old virtual machines running in VMware, the lift and shift requires the least amount of skilling up in new technologies.
Right. So
you're still going to have to learn some of how the cloud that you're lifting and shifting works, but it's the minimum amount.
This is a great transition into point number 2, which is why would I lift and shift an application, or a system, I should say, from whatever my current architectures are into a cloud provider, right? And to me, you've already sort of answered that, right? It's because you need to get your application out of your data center and into the cloud, for whatever reason, whatever your drivers are, right? As quickly and easily as possible. Cost be damned, right? You need the thing to work there. And a lot of people use this as sort of a gateway into the cloud, right? Get your stuff there, and then figure out what to do with it once it's there. Now, there's a lot of pros and cons there, right? And Mark, you were already touching on them. That's not necessarily the least expensive way to go about it, unless you start thinking about... So there's 2 ways to get your application to the cloud, in my mind. 2, at least at a very broad stroke, right? One way is to completely re-architect the entire thing so that it is completely cloud native, right? Remember that buzzword? It's designed to work with whatever cloud provider you're moving into. It utilizes all of the little API-driven pieces, and it's all compartmentalized stuff, and it uses all of the the features of your cloud provider, whoever they are. And I'm trying to be kind of like cloud agnostic here. But imagine if you were on AWS, right? You'd be using their database service. You'd be using their load balancer service. You'd be using their compute services. You'd be using, all the pieces that they use to make this all cheaper and more decentralized, right? Which you might argue is the quote-unquote right way to get into a cloud provider. However, it means that your administrators, your app developers, everyone that's responsible for your application has to figure out how the hell all that stuff works. So now it becomes this big project, and it's going to take you months to figure out, and that has cost, right? That's not free. Yes, it's just the hours that your people are spending, but it's hours that they could have been spending doing something else, right? So that in itself has cost. Simply picking up the application and plugging it into an EC2 instance has like real monetary hourly, monthly, minutely costs, right? But it doesn't have 6 months of planning and 3 months of deployment. Right?
Well, actually, it can.
Sure, it could, but I think that scales, like you're probably thinking if you're moving a whole data center, yes, it might take you months. I'm talking like I have one app. I've got like a website or something that's compartmentalized on one VM, perfect candidate for a lift and shift, right? Re-architecting that whole thing might take weeks or months, whereas just picking it up and moving it into a VM on EC2 could take an overnight.
How? What tooling are you using to do it?
Well, I guess that depends on, like, there's lots of ways to get it done. Amazon actually wants you to do this. They have tooling that will take images, take VMs, and sort of convert them into a cloud image that you can just deploy.
So maybe they do in 2022. I can tell you in 2011 and 2012, when we were doing this at Merck, they did not. And we spent a significant amount of engineering time creating a boot DVD ISO that you could either boot a physical box or boot a VM with. And by making the proper API calls to Amazon, it would create the VM shell, the EC2 instance, and then it would create a volume for each. It would create a EBS volume for every disk that was on the machine, and then copy that data over. And then 99% of the time, the EC2 instance actually freaking worked, right?
But
it came up in short.
So again,
that took engineering effort. It took us several months to create that utility that would then allow us to migrate either physical or virtual hosts into EC2 instances. Now, maybe Amazon provides that tool today. I don't know, but they sure didn't back in 2012, 2013.
Imagine if instead of putting the time into figuring out how to simply replicate your data center in the cloud, you had to put all that time into learning new technologies, how they interact, how to optimize them, and then how to put your application on those. Don't you think that would have taken longer?
It probably would have taken longer, but here's my opinion on what you end up with under both situations. When you do a lift and shift, you end up with something on a crappier platform doing the same job. You end up on Amazon white box hardware, and I can show you how the VMs work under load, where you're actually fighting against other applications on this crappy white box hardware, and in top, the percent steal is sometimes as high as 60%. And what that means, okay,
you're bringing up a point that is an excellent point, okay, but that is not specific, right, to the topic at hand tonight. That's certainly, in fact, we could even devote a show to like the caveats of cloud, right?
You're diving too deep.
Yeah.
But so what I'm telling you, it's a negative to lift and shift, because what you're doing is you're paying for 100% of the time, and you're only getting a certain amount of compute resource that you're actually paying for, and your application, the servers that are now in the cloud, as lifted and shifted, are inherently less stable, because Amazon doesn't give a crap about outage windows and patching. If their white boxes fall over, they don't care that the president of Merck is now pissed. If we did work in one of our data centers, we had to go through change control and stuff.
So somebody has some serious scar tissue with this.
He seems to. Yes.
But
however, you're not wrong, right? You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. This is definitely an old man yells at cloud situation.
Literally. I'm just saying that
right.
In the end, you end up on a crappier hardware base, and you end up paying for a system that these lifted and shifted systems were never architected to be turned off and on.
Yeah.
So it's going to run 24/7.
Yep. And this exactly is one of the negatives that I wanted to talk about, right? Amazon has this, well, not just Amazon. cloud providers have designed their architectures, their systems, their compute resources around applications that are fault tolerant. Traditional virtualization is designed around high availability and around 100% uptime, or 99.999% uptime, because you never get 100%. So that's one of the things you need to grapple with, right? If you move an application to the cloud, you better, if it doesn't already have resiliency and fault tolerance built into it, you better add it, or you better find a way to make it highly available or something, or re-architect it so that it can be sort of torn down and stood back up again at a moment's notice, right?
You have to, I mean, to take a step back a little bit, lifting and shifting. So back in the 2010s or earlier, lifting and shifting was done primarily because a CEO said, "Ooh, cloud, I'm told this is cheaper. We have to go there tomorrow, make it happen." And that's why it was lifted. There was no engineering behind it. It was, that's shiny, we have to be there, get us there now.
Right.
And what a lot of people found at that point was that, you know, simply lifting and shifting to the cloud didn't necessarily offer them much, and it cost a hell of a lot more in some cases, in many cases, than running on your own hardware that they already had. Now, there's different drawbacks to being in a physical data center versus being in a cloud environment, et cetera. I mean, you know, cloud environments, you don't have to worry about the hardware. That's taken care of for you. Whereas on-prem, that's your hardware. If it breaks, you have to fix it. When it's old, you have to replace it. You know, that's all on you. But you know, as we've moved forward, lifting and shifting, I think, you know, for people that at least are paying attention, I think it's a different motive now. A lot of what is done. So the most recent lift and shift that I did was a couple of years ago, but it was primarily, we need to get out of this data center because the business that we were in has changed, and we need to be in a different situation. You know, we need to be in AWS for what we're doing moving forward, because the data center is actually costing us too much. And trying to re-architect everything to get to AWS would take too long, and we'd spend too much money on paying for what we were paying for in the DC. So we picked it up and moved it over overnight.
I have a quick.
So did AWS have tooling for you at that point?
No, it was a small enough footprint that I basically rebuilt everything by hand.
When I had
tried, and the tooling didn't work very well, but
when I was at the college, I was almost certain that we had one of these AWS implementers that were coming in to talk to us, and I'm almost certain they said there was tooling that said that they could take an existing running VM and sort of convert it and import it into EC2.
There is tooling that you can do that. I don't know how much it's like how much better it's gotten. At the time,
I don't know if they tried it at all, because I was gone by the time they were actually moving stuff.
At the time that I tried their tooling, it was here's this tool. This will totally take care of everything that you want it to do, except this endless list over here of things that it won't fix. So after you've created the image, you're going to have to go in and fix these things. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It really depended on a lot of it depended on what you were doing.
Right.
Let me put it this way: the CD that we developed at Merck, like the actual creating of the shell and the copying the data, was generic AF. It would work on anything. Mm-hmm. What was huge was something that Jason just inferred: the post-install script that had to clean everything up and Mercify things properly. That's where some engineering is required. And if Amazon is providing a base tooling experience that's better, then yes, Nate, to your point, the engineering work has probably gotten easier. The other option is to stand up fresh classic VMs, and the app team reinstalls on them, but the app team never wants to friggin' reinstall.
Right. So that was my other.
We always ran into that.
Yeah, that was my other suggestion.
I was the app team
redeploying. But however, so redeploying on known, and I know this is a really perilous statement.
Well,
redeploying,
anyway. No,
redeploying
Let me
based on all of the copious notes the app team took when they deployed it the first time, right?
Oh,
Is
geez.
probably easier. Probably easier than re-architecting the whole thing to work
Boozer in
using
here.
cloud services, right?
Copious
Yeah.
notes that the app team generated when installing. How
That's
much beer have
that's
you had tonight?
That's the perilous part.
Did you pregame this podcast?
He
Yeah,
must have.
with most of a bottle of Pepsi. Yeah.
Okay, I think there was more than just Pepsi in that.
Yeah,
You better be
it's
checking.
rum and Pepsi. No. Yeah. So, you're like that. That's the crux of that argument, right? If you have good notes, if you know how to deploy the application easily, then redeploying on a cloud provider could theoretically be easier than converting a VM to move into a cloud provider, and could or should be easier than re-architecting the entire app to use cloud native services, right? However,
And by the way, cloud servers, even though it's a VM with disk and networking, does not mean that it will work the same way that it did when it was in your data center. Case in point.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, case in point, it's a little bit different now because it sort of supports this now. But at the time that I was doing a lift and shift, AWS did not support multicast. Period.
oh right,
Nor,
yeah,
and when Merck was doing it, AWS didn't support LVM.
oh yeah.
Oh,
Can you now?
It shouldn't have mattered because it was our own custom build anyway, and we didn't give a shit. But technically, yeah, it technically didn't. They technically didn't support LVM.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
Amazon
it's
Linux might
block.
not still, but and
Well,
what's
I'm-
the? I'm trying to think
It's- you
what's the real advantage to LVM? I guess if you want to add disks and expand, but that's perilous
that's
all
what
by
we-
itself, right?
That's what we were used to.
Yeah.
we were running
Right.
RHEL 5,
Right.
and LVM and RHEL 5 was banging.
And if we're talking about truly lifting and shifting and using all of the same tooling on one
Yeah.
side as you are on the other, then you want it to be the same. I can understand that.
Right. You have to supply, block storage of the same size and the same number of storage devices that you had to begin with, or you have to
Right.
rebuild the server. Yeah.
So I have one more thing that could be a why would I lift and shift versus why would I re-architect, and that is once you've taken your application and re-architected it to work on cloud provider X, aren't you kind of stuck there? Like,
Well,
doesn't
that-
moving to
yeah.
another cloud provider or moving back to a data center or even just changing architectures or whatever, doesn't that require an entirely new project to re-architect your application then?
well, that's where you got vendor lock and stuff.
Right.
Depending upon on what level the architecture is done, that's where
Right.
like if you're generic Kubernetes, because I'm not going to pimp Red Hat stuff, in theory that can isolate you from that a little bit. Like if you've got a containerized application,
Yeah, that's a good middle of the road.
in a Kubernetes world, then that should be transferable to any cloud provider.
Yeah, that's a good middle of the road, I think. That
And our Red Hat
you take
fans can sub in what I'm really saying.
Yeah.
Open hybrid cloud.
But I mean,
Honestly,
be,
like containerized in general is probably a better stance, I would think, than buying into all of the, Cloud Vendor X's special sauce.
Yeah.
Even though
I
the
don't
special sauce
know
might
that-
be cheaper, don't you think?
I don't know that I agree on it. Depends on what you're doing, right? So, I mean, for the most part, when you jump into AWS, Azure, Google, whatever, you're kind of like, if you design an application to run in that environment, you're really not moving it out without serious changes. So, and using services like their RDP or their message queuing stuff, like it's decent. It works well. So, vendor lock-in, yes, it's a thing, but once you're in there, trying to run things in a traditional manner inside of a cloud provider is kind of foolhardy. You're wasting money, a lot
You're
of
not
money.
wrong. You're not wrong.
If you're not taking advantage of the services they're offering, you're doing it wrong. Don't just might as well build a data center.
I mean, I'd argue it's still cheaper than building a data center. No?
Yeah, but I mean, you're not. It depends. It depends
even
on how you do it. I mean, if you're
even running a colo, it'd be cheaper than renting a colo.
Sure, but colo. I mean, data centers are more big boys game, but you know, if you're in a colo, it may cost you more to be in AWS to do certain things, right? Like if you're gonna run in AWS, you really should be doing things more the AWS way. I mean, look at just a straight up VM, like a moderate sized VM like a single moderate sized VM with 4 CPUs is, I mean, you're looking at between $150 and $300 a month, depending on how much memory you need. And that's before you get to putting like big disk on it. That's just for the VM. And companies that are running hundreds or thousands of these, that's a good chunk of change. But if you redesign your application that was running on that VM to be more microservice oriented, and you use things like Lambdas, and you use things like API Gateway, you take advantage of RDP and the other stuff that's there, that same application that was costing you $200 a month to run, on that one server may cost you $20. I mean, you can run millions of Lambdas in a month for next to nothing. The money really comes in when you're running stuff that's 24/7. And that would be services like RDP and EC2 instances and et cetera.
But how much re-architecture is required in using something like serverless on Lambda? Like it
depends. It's almost impossible to give a generic answer to, because it depends on what your application is. So I mean,
I feel like for most applications that I've seen, that'd be considerable. It's almost like you have to design a new application that's made to use it. Like taking an existing app and making it use serverless. Right. Like that, I just don't feel like that's going to happen.
If you're not doing that, why did you go to cloud? Right? Like, I mean, there's pros and cons to being there. And, just going to cloud to use it as a virtualization platform I think it's a waste of money.
I think working at too many startups has affected your brain, is what this comes down to.
No.
When you've got an enterprise that has 30 years of compute history, re-architecting is no one's got a taste for that. When they think about moving to the cloud, they think about standing up VMs on the cloud like they did in their data center.
Well,
I've been at more than one company that has done this and turned around 6 months later and gone, "Oh my God, we made a huge mistake."
Yeah, and then what do they do about it?
Depends on the company.
Statistics that I've seen, like as part of my new role, say that they're just going back to their data center.
Right. So they move to cloud, they lose money, they move back to the data center, they lose money both ways, back and forth. They go back to the data center and go back to doing the exact same thing that they've been doing. And yes, a lot of big companies do this, and a lot of big companies never move forward, and they never innovate again, because they just become big monoliths that just sit there on the same thing that they've had for years. And then 50 years later, IT specialists come in and go, "Oh my God, COBOL, APL, we don't know this stuff. Time to rip it apart and start over."
Yeah.
And look, one of the companies that I had worked for previously literally had a guy that they paid, disturbing sums of money. I think it was 7 figures a year for him to be on call 24/7 for this company, because he's like one of the only people in the world who knows this code.
Yeah.
Because it's written in some obscure language. Well, that's millions of dollars that you're spending on this.
Yeah, but
if you spent a little and re-architected it, like,
that's kind of an extreme example, though. That's kind of an extreme example, though,
it's
right?
Not. It's not. It's happening all over.
The applications. Yes, that legacy stuff is still out there. I mean, we see it all the time. That's why there's people that are. That's why there are people that are still running mainframes that are like 30 years out of support, right?
APL and COBOL programmers are a huge need for a lot of things.
And you know why? Because those ancient beasts are still driving revenue and still driving processes.
Yes, they are.
I think Merck eventually got rid of the mainframe, but that mainframe made a fuck ton of money for the
Yes.
company. So paying that guy 7 figures for that code, how much code was that? How much revenue was that bringing in every year? I feel more sorry for the CIOs who get snowed by slick talking sales guys who convince them they need to migrate their stuff into the cloud, and they lift and shift it because, oh, it's easy and straightforward, and down the road you can redesign it, and then they end up in these ugly situations.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating that you just lift and shift. There needs to be a plan. You need to have a full-blown plan on what you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't lift and shift and go, okay, we're done, and walk away. Like, forget it, because that's just madness. You should be looking at, these are the applications that are going to get lifted and shifted that we can't touch, that are going to be there longer term. This is the stuff. These are the ones that are going to be projects that we're going to turn into scalable applications that are going to move forward and do what we need for the business. Yeah, there has to be a strategy behind it, not a cloud is pretty and we should go there.
I think that
I was at Merck when that was happening. The execs would it was almost like a pissing contest with execs in different companies. They'd learn their buddy at Pfizer was going cloud, so Merck had to.
Yeah,
and then BMS would hear that Merck was going cloud, so they had to, and it was snake oil salesman.
Right, but it was all a marketing thing, because all of a sudden you could turn around and say, like, we're in the cloud, and for some reason that made you better than the competition. Nobody ever explained it, but now you're in the cloud, so you're better than the competition. It's just marketing nonsense. But I've been in companies where I'm the one screaming, going, this is great. Like, what are we doing longer term? Because this is dumb.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're here. What's next? I know we're done.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean we're done?
Right.
That wasn't the plan.
Where I'm looking at data centers that we have that are falling apart because it costs a decent amount of money to keep a data center up and running.
Yeah.
And going, we can do this, and it's that would cost money to do that project. Like, this thing's gonna fall down. Like, it's this hardware has been out of it's been EOL'd for 10 years and we're still using it, right? Like, why are we running OS2 Warp? Like, that's not a thing we should be running in 2000. Like, come on.
Unless you're a car dealership, apparently.
Or a telco.
That apparently was very pervasive in car dealerships for some reason. I don't know why.
There's telcos. I think there's telcos that are still running OS2 Warp.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So, but I mean, that's what you have. I mean, telcos are sort of a different beast because you can't really lift and shift a telco because, well, of what it is. But there's companies that are.
I can't run my telco in the cloud. What are you talking about?
Yeah, something about physical line access.
Yeah, right. Someday it'll all be IP. Actually, someday it'll all be cellular, which is basically just IP.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, we've gone on kind of all over around the bush, through the bush, over the bush, kicked the horse a few times. Horse got back up. We killed it a second time and kicked it again.
Stupid horse.
Stupid horse.
Horse never learns.
Horse never learns. All right, so my last point was how can you perform a lift and shift, but I think we've already kind of touched on that, right? Like, there's a couple ways to get that done. You can literally image the thing using the tooling that Amazon supposedly has, or your cloud provider supposedly has. The one I saw was from Amazon. If it works. You can redeploy on the cloud, which, I don't know, do you still call it a lift and shift? I guess you do. You're still using the same basic setup. It just isn't a direct clone of what you had. I guess it's more like a backup and restore than a clone, right? And that's kind of it, right? Was there another way to get that done? I don't think there was. Oh, the tooling that Mark, that you suggested, where you build an ISO and redeploy that way. But even still, that's more like a reinstall and redeploy, isn't it? Or was that actually deploying an application as it went?
No, the application is shut down. the server is shut down. You attach the boot ISO, you boot to the ISO, and then the ISO takes over, makes the skeleton machine in the cloud, creates as many disk volumes as it needs, and then copies the data into them. And when you bring it up, the application, yeah, it's got a different IP address, right?
Just kind of
Yeah,
comes
we
up
had
in the
some
cloud.
application owners like the IP can't change. Well, no,
Sorry,
it's going to change.
it's gonna have to. There isn't a choice here.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know.
in
There
theory,
were there's some folks that ported their own IP space into or routed their own IP space into Amazon or into cloud
yeah,
providers.
Merck actually owned an entire Class A subnet, and we traded that to Amazon for credits. So not only did Merck like jump into the cloud, but everybody was just like, "Oh, well, we'll just use the credit." So it was like a bunch of friggin' teenagers that had daddy's credit card and no
So they
concept that a bill was going to come due.
so they jumped into the cloud and burned the bridge behind them on the way in. Is what you're telling me by
Basically,
selling their own
and
IP space to Amazon.
I was telling people one day the credits will be gone and we're going to have to pay real money, but no one cared.
Like, there we got like a bazillion of them, a bazillion Bezos dollars. We're good.
Yeah, not really. Not really. It was weird, man. It was
That's
a weird
that's
time.
Bezos coin.
Bezos coin, is it all? And then,
Yeah,
and then it
no,
all.
but one of the Merck employees that had the foresight real early in the internet game to buy one of the Class A subnets in the company's name. And so we sold it to Amazon in exchange for Amazon credits. It's like stories of like, Bitcoin, I bought a pizza with Bitcoin, and had I held on to that Bitcoin today, I would be a gajillionaire.
Right, right. That is kind of.
Well, a year ago.
Yeah,
now,
you'd
no.
be a bajillionaire if you sold it at the right time. Now
yeah.
you'd be able to get half a pizza.
Well, actually, you'd probably still be a bajillionaire right now, but
Yeah,
Yeah. Bad Net Mask is following. That's a great name.
it is.
Thanks, Bad Net Mask. And you got Zelda. I know it's Link.
Yeah, that's actually now we don't get
That's
that
like
many notifications. I picked those as the notifications that come up because
that's like how Grandma, every time you were playing a video game, regardless of the system, Grandma asked, "Are you
stop playing
Nintendo?"
Mario. Oh yeah, right, Nintendo. It's always Nintendo because that's the one that they
Gross.
plugged in as video game system. Nintendo has to
No,
be.
Grandma, I don't even own a Nintendo. It's an Apple II Plus, whatever.
Stop playing Nintendo on the TV. I want to watch
By then it was a
Jeopardy.
PC or something.
Yeah, right.
It's a PlayStation, Grandma.
Anyway, this topic didn't go as long as I thought it might. Is there any other thoughts that we can think to cover before we move along?
It still was a respectable length, dude.
Oh yeah, it's been like 40 minutes. I'm not saying it's too short. I'm just saying like we've
I
covered it pretty well. Are there any other points to talk about?
I guess if I had to give an executive summary about lift and shift, it looks like it's the cheapest and easiest route, and in the end, it's often the worst way to do it.
I still think there's a use case, and
That's why I said often, but it's
yeah,
often the very worst way to do it.
yeah, and I still think that portability, depending on who you are and what you're doing, and like how squirrel focused your leadership is, going all in on a certain provider may bite you later, right? So
Oh, it
I
will
don't know.
bite you.
Yeah, it will. It's not a question of when. It will. Not a question of if. It's when. Right. Any final thoughts, Jason? You look like you're just brimming with ideas. You're like, I want to argue. I want to argue
no,
with Nate.
I
You're remembering all those days where we had those heated discussions on the drive home from work. You're like,
yeah, no, and I was,
He's tired of it.
I was intensely anti cloud, and you were more pro cloud, and now I think the
I've never
the
been pro
positions
cloud.
you kind of were, but I think it's almost reversed now. I'm not completely pro cloud, but I mean, look at the recent year that we've had where getting hardware alone is impossible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems with cloud resources.
No, so to be fair, there was a point in my own career where I thought the cloud was basically a bunch of snake oil that was eventually going to just fizzle away. And then when it didn't fizzle away, it was more like, oh yeah, but can you trust it? And then when that kind of, I still feel like there's like the utter paranoid sysadmin in me still thinks that cloud is very perilous from a privacy and security standpoint because it's shared hardware and whatnot. And we've seen exploits that allow you to like break out of your VM and attack others that are on the same hypervisor as you. Now those are not very directed attacks, and whatever. I know there's lots of. The thing is that like cloud, I feel like to be in a cloud provider, it has to come along with all this like legal speak that says not necessarily that your data is safe, but that you are legally covered, right? And to me, those aren't the same things. If my data is leaked, it's still leaked. Even if I'm legally covered, the data is still leaked. And to me, that's more like a philosophical thing than a legal thing, right? Obviously, if you're covered legally, then fine, you're covered legally. But it still feels kind of like a cheesy exit. You know what I mean? That's just me.
I do like cheese, though.
I mean, yeah, it depends on the cheese. The sharper cheeses are not really my thing, but the good creamy cheeses, they're good. Anyway, cheese in a good soup, cheesy soup. Anyway, Iron Sysadmin, where we talk about beer and cheesy soup, cheesy beer soup. That's even better. Apparently, I've been distracted.
There are definitely cheesy beer soups that are wonderful.
Anyway, I went off on a tangent about cloud there. Yeah, anyway, in today's world, the cloud is just a fact, right? You have to deal with it. If you're going to be an administrator, you're going to have to grapple with it, whether you're 100% cloud or 10% cloud or, whatever. And you may have to deal with many providers. There's a lot of folks that pick and choose, right? Like, oh, Google Compute can do this thing this way at this price, and AWS can do this other thing this other way at this other price, right? And, because it's cheaper to run this app there and this app there, we just run on both. Like that's a thing. People do that. Sounds like a nightmare to me, but, people are doing it. So, I don't know what my point there was. I'm just rambling at this point to talk about the cloud. I hate the cloud, but I like the cloud. I have to live with the cloud. The cloud is a thing. Nothing. Okay,
well, why don't we close down this half, do our little break, and then come back and talk about more fun stuff.
Yep.
That's not the cloud.
That's a good idea. Save me from rambling. All right, guys, we are going to go to a break. Remember, we split the show in half now, so if you're listening audio, then be sure to check out Part B to hear like usual housekeeping updates and the news when we cover it. If you're on the live stream, then stick around. We're going to go to a break. Probably not too long a one, and then we'll be back in a few minutes, and we'll pick up with the second half of the show. If anybody does tune out, thanks for watching, listening, whatever you're doing, and yeah, we'll catch you in a few. So we'll be right back. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. Welcome back, folks. If you're just tuning in to the second half of the show here, this is part B. You might want to go back and listen to part A. We talked all about the lift and shift mechanism of moving your stuff into the cloud. Some of the pros and cons. I guess mostly cons, really. I gave you some pros, but you guys were all about the cons.
Because whatever. We already talked about it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. If you're going to run a traditional thing,
we already talked about it. You're rehashing.
I am. I should stop. I already rambled enough in the first part. So if you want to hear me ramble, listen to like the last 5 minutes of part A. Anyway, in this part of the show, however, we're going to go over some announcements, and then we're going to go into the news, and we're going to chat a little bit, and we're just going to go ahead and get started with that. So, first of all, top of the show, we're going to talk about our awesome patrons. You guys are great. Just a reminder, as I've promised since July, all of our Patreon funds from July till December of this year are going to go to the American Cancer Society in memory of my mother-in-law who passed away back in July. So, again, if anybody wants to, for some reason, opt out of that, just let us know. We'll figure it out. If you're completely fine with it, then don't do a thing. And in December, we're going to send a check off to, not the guy from Star Trek, Chekhov. We're going to send a check off to the American Cancer Society. It probably won't even be a check. It'll be like an electronic thing. Because who writes a check anymore? Nobody writes a check. Maybe Mark does. Do you write checks, Mark?
No, not when I can avoid them.
Checks suck. They suck. Because it's like, I wrote a check. It took 3 weeks for them to cash it. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Oh, it's the check I wrote 3 weeks ago. God, this is annoying. How did people live like this? Anyway. So spoiled. Right, so, patrons. Name pending 197. Jeremy, Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, David, Solemn, Linux Sys 666, Mark with a K, The Mentor, Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, Jay, and Charles. Thank you all for being patrons, and, you guys are great. If you guys want to support the show via Patreon, go over to patreon.com/Iron Sysadmin, right? Yeah. And you can do so. Or if you want to support the show by simply buying merch, you can go to Teespring, teespring.com/stores/Iron Sysadmin. We get a few bucks if you buy a shirt, which nobody does. Should I stop bothering with the shirts? Nobody wants them. Go buy shirts, folks. Prove me wrong.
I don't know.
Otherwise, that's kind of our announcements. Oh, I had one other. Tomorrow, I'm going to be co-hosting Into the Terminal, which is a Red Hat live stream that happens weekly. I think it's weekly. Yeah, it's every week, where we basically go over like a technology that's in RHEL. Right. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Samba. Samba. No, we're not going to dance. I can't dance. No dancing involved. Samba file services. CIFS. Right? CIFS, isn't that the protocol it uses? Anyway, tomorrow at noon, you can find it. I'll find a link. It's on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux YouTube channel. You can watch it live there. All right. I forgot to look for reviews, but I'm pretty sure there aren't any. Let me check right now.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, right. Because
Yes, the reviews, not liking my singing.
If we missed one. What? No, I don't want to. So frustrating. I hate when you go to a service that you want to log into, and the first thing they bring you to is the sign-up page.
Computers are hard.
They are. They're hard. Computers are hard. And nope, no new reviews. We're good. I didn't miss anybody, but I am sad now because there's no new reviews. Folks, leave us a review. That way, we know if you like the show or if you hate the show. Just don't pick on poor Mark again. He still hasn't recovered from the last one.
Yeah.
All right, and that's it for the announcements. You guys have anything fun going on? I have myself first in the notes, but I feel like I've been talking a lot this part of the show already. How about one of you guys goes first? I'll even move you to the top. Mark, you're already in here. I'm going to move your stuff.
Oh, okay.
But now you don't have it for a reference because I cut it out. What are you going to do? There it is. It's back.
That's fine. So I've got... Basically, I've got Steam Deck and other.
Steam Deck and other. That's your life at the moment. Steam Deck. If it's not Steam Deck, it falls into the other category.
Yeah, right. So I printed out this little stand for it a few weeks ago, which has been super handy. So
that's pretty cool.
I provided the Thingiverse file for it. Yeah, and the idea is sometimes I'll use it docked, but sometimes I want the internal display active, and I don't want it just lying flat on its back. So I'll throw it in the dock, and it'll be kind of back at an angle, and I can still see what's going on. Primary use case there is when I'm remote played into my PS5 and I'm AFKing in my nightclub just to earn money in GTA Online, which is oddly specific, I know, but your passive stuff in GTA Online doesn't run when you're not logged into the game.
I heard
it's a little old.
I heard it actually made one of the news podcasts I listened to in the morning that somebody, after like 2.5 years, has made $1 billion in GTA Online.
Good for them.
I know, right? And somehow this was important enough to make the news. It's just one of those like fun fact things. Did you know?
It's fairly easy to get a couple of million, so I don't know why it took so long to get $1 billion. Maybe $1 billion saved up without spending it, right?
Yeah, right.
That could be the big deal. The other thing I messed with is, because it's a Linux machine, I poked around and got the SSHD server running, so I copied my keys onto it and I can SSH to it from my laptop, which is fun for pulling data off of it, like screenshots, or if I want to do some command line stuff with it.
Because we're nerds and we can't leave well enough alone.
And I don't. Well, because that way I don't have to switch it to desktop mode to do command line stuff.
No, I get it.
In gaming mode.
No, I completely get it. I get it
because it's a Linux box.
It doesn't. Right? It doesn't like sync those screenshots to something that you could get them more easily.
Steam ones it does, but so for instance, the Disney Dreamlight Valley game I'm playing now, when you take a picture in game, it puts those pictures in its own weird ass directory that I had to actually dig through and figure it
Yeah,
out. So
Steam.
I then sim linked it back. No, it's not. This was not like Steam screenshots. This is its own data folder.
Right. No, no, that's
And
exactly what I'm saying. Some games in Steam, screenshots are not as straightforward as you'd think, right? Like some
yeah,
games play really nice with Steam, and you take a screenshot, and Steam goes like, no, no, it doesn't go over there. It goes here in the Steam screenshots directly.
yeah,
Some games are
yeah,
like, no, I'm gonna put it way over here where they'll never find it.
yeah. And so when you're playing on the Steam Deck, what you have to find is you have to find the app ID or guess lucky or just do finds to find the name of stuff
Find
because the
dot
app ID has the
dash name
prefix
star.jpg.
subdirectory, which is essentially every single game under Wine or every app under Wine gets a prefix directory,
Mm-hmm.
which is its own C drive. It's almost like a container.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
skeletal file system that the app drops stuff into because it thinks it's on Windows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in this case, the screenshots are in the prefix directory for Dreamlight Valley, which then it's buried a couple of layers in there.
So
So I
is
then just sim linked that back into my home directory, and
is
then I
that
can just SCP the camera shots.
is that basically how these things work on the Steam Deck? How these Windows games work on the Steam Deck? They're
Absolutely,
like it's
yeah.
like emulate, not
They use
emulated. Wine is not an
so
emulator. Um,
yeah, they use Proton, which is derived from Wine. It
okay.
contains Wine.
Okay. I remember back in the early days of trying to game on Linux, there was things like Wineskin and what was it? Bottle or something? No, Wineskin used bottles, which is basically what
I
you're describing, right? It's like its own little not container in the true sense of a container, but its own little file system that contains all the dependencies for the game, which are then run through Wine or through whatever, right?
yeah
And even gaming on Mac OS was like that for a while. You'd use
yeah
something, I forget what it was called.
yeah I don't know.
I don't remember the name of it. But there were certain games that I had a friend who was on Mac that he wanted to be able to play, and he played it through this thing that was basically just Wine on Mac OS, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah. No, but so when you install a Steam game on the deck, it checks to see if there's a Linux version. And if there's a Linux version, it uses that. So
Right,
Valheim on the Steam Deck is running the Linux version of Valheim. If there
right.
is no Linux version, it treats it as it just creates a wine entry for it with its own file system, and you can basically pick the version of Proton to use if the standard one is being persnickety. Like
So
you can use Proton Experimental or whatever, or you can lock onto a specific version of Proton.
I haven't looked into this, so this may be like no duh, Nate. Of course it does. But will Steam on Linux do the same thing, or is that specific to the Steam Deck?
Yes, Steam on Linux will do the same thing if you activate. So Steam on Linux, it used to be that unless you activated the compatibility stuff, it just ran Linux native. They added the Proton capability in it some time back. So
Okay.
people on desktop Steam have been able to use Proton for quite a while.
Okay. I haven't. I gave up on gaming on Linux so long ago, and honestly, like I gave up some of my soul when I did so because I really, really wanted it to work. But I mean,
The
there were
Steam Deck
like
really, really works.
the
It's
only
actually
games
pretty amazing.
the only games you used to be able to run well were things that had native Linux ports, and there were so few of them that it just wasn't like
So
you could not play the A-list games just on your principles, or you could run a Windows box to game on.
well, and like the Steam Deck will do some other nifty things. You can any non-Steam software you can import into Steam to run as a non-Steam thing. I have the Heroic Gaming Launcher, which is an open source version of the Epic Store
Okay,
launcher.
so you can
So
play Fortnite.
like, I think there's an issue with the copy protection with Fortnite.
So you've tried to run Fortnite. That
For
was the
the
game
anti-cheat.
you always used to claim I played, and I've played like 2 minutes of
I have
Fortnite my whole
not.
life.
I have not. I have not tried to play Fortnite, but people ask about it on a fairly regular basis, and the issue is the anti-cheat doesn't work on Linux.
Yeah, but
This,
like
by the way, a couple of weeks ago, like when EA was talking about kernel side anti-cheat stuff, that would screw up on Steam Deck.
yeah,
You won't be able to run games that use kernel level anti-cheat
like
because that's Windows kernel level anti-cheat.
Borderlands, isn't that Epic? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
I think Borderlands has been released on a couple of gaming stores. I'm pretty
Okay.
It's on Steam as well.
Okay. I got it for free
Well,
like a month or two back, and it made me install the
now,
Epic launcher.
just because something's on Steam doesn't mean it's automatically compatible. PUBG, because the anti-cheat, that doesn't work on the Steam Deck either.
Right.
Your option would be to stream it using either the native streaming to the deck or something like Moonlight, which lets you stream desktop to your deck.
So
And
we've
it's
rabbit
actually
holed.
running on your desktop.
We've rabbit holed into all.
Well-
Like, just because I had a question. Sorry about that.
No,
You were
it's
talking
okay.
about
Trying to-
your dock thing.
No, and the Steam Deck in general, and I know you're going to touch upon Elden Ring a little bit, but like, it's actually amazing to me how well a lot of the non-native stuff runs in it. When we played Elden Ring the other night, I was running both Elden Ring and Discord on the Steam Deck with the Steam Deck docked to my external monitor and my headphones plugged into the USB dock, and it worked great. It worked, and that was just as a tech test, right?
Yeah.
Because I could just have easily run Elden Ring on my Windows machine. and
Yeah,
it
right.
would
But you wanted to
say
see if you
yes,
could.
so-
Yeah.
and it worked. It worked great.
So if all the games that you like work in the Steam Deck, and I already know the answer to this, but I'm asking it for the viewers. If all the games that you like worked on the Steam Deck, would you get rid of your gaming rig?
So for me personally, not yet,
'Cause of VR.
Like yesterday I was flying. Flight Simulator had a major upgrade, and I wanted to test it out. So I was flying an F-18 around the hurricane in Florida in VR, and it was fun.
Yeah.
So
Did you-
for me,
did you
there's
see any-
still some stuff.
Did you see any sharks in the street?
No, but there were a lot of other players who had the same idea. When I spawned on the runway, there was a stack of us because players don't collide in Flight Simulator. That's to prevent griefing. So
Yeah.
there were a bunch of people on the runway getting ready to take off out of Orlando. It was funny. Because the multiplayer is always on there unless
Yeah.
you turn it off. But the use case for me with the Steam Deck, because it pauses. Well, Jason, you have one, right? So you know, you can basically instantly pause and resume, and it'll cloud save. So progress you make on the Steam Deck can be reflected on your Windows gaming rig, if the title supports cloud save.
Yeah. I gotta say,
What's
like,
neat about the
I have this
it-
I have this relatively recently purchased nice gaming rig, right? And that's one of the reasons I have not jumped wholeheartedly into, oh yes, I need a Steam Deck, is because I have this rig, right? And I see no need for a portable PC gaming machine. Now, I'm going to be traveling more for work. Like this may actually impact me. Like if I'm like bored at a hotel somewhere and want to be able to fire up Cyberpunk or something. I might see a use case for that now that I'm getting back to travel and stuff. But
Yeah, I brought it when my wife and I went to Steven's parents' weekend. I bought it to play in the hotel at night. But I'll tell you, I get tired of sitting in the same damn chair all day. So being able to game just over on my couch or to take it upstairs or whatever, there's a lot of power in that too.
yeah, I guess being able to
So
move to
even
that
just
recliner to play a game,
Even
might
just
not be
traveling
bad.
around in my house to game.
Yeah,
And again, everything works hot. So if I'm playing something docked and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get up, I can just pull it and it instantly snaps to the internal screen without any issues. It really, and the software, I'm in the beta channel. It just keeps getting better and better and better. Valve has
And-
been updating the crap out of it.
and from what I've
What-
heard, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
What controllers are you using when it's docked?
I use a PS4 controller. This guy right here.
Wireless, or you have to wire it in somehow?
I wire it because I'm Commander Adama and no networks on my ship.
I know exactly what you're saying.
I prefer to wire things when possible.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I was one of the last adopters of wireless internet in my house because Ethernet worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the couch is so damn far away from the TV that
It is.
I just don't want to play wires.
It is.
It'll work with Bluetooth. So if I decide to dock it on the big ass TV and I don't want to run my extended cable, I can certainly Bluetooth.
I bet
connect
it
But
won't work with a Stadia controller though.
I don't know. That's on the Stadia controller if it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
No,
'Cause
it absolutely is.
It's a
It
it's a
absolutely is.
PC.
We'll certainly
it's
talk about that
there's
later, though.
There's nothing proprietary about it.
Yeah.
At its core, and the whole
and
freaking
now-
operating system is open source.
Now I can't remember what I was going to ask. There was another thing that I let Jason go, and now I can't remember what it was. Must not have been that important.
Anyway.
Oh no, I know
so-
what it was.
so-
I've heard that the supply chain problems that were causing all the back orders are starting to subside. So if you order a Steam Deck, you're now not waiting 6 months anymore. Now it's more like a month or two.
Yeah,
That's my
that
son-
seems to
that's my
be
son's Steam Deck, which is going to college on Sunday.
Oh, cool.
yeah that seems to be across the board. For not just for like Steam Decks, but for a lot of things, the supply chain is starting to ease up a bit.
Yeah, which is
Um,
good. Which is good.
so-
It means we're starting to
so-
recover.
So there are a billion articles on how to hook up damn near any controller you have to the Steam Deck, except the Stadia controller.
Yeah, because nobody bought them.
you can apparently play Stadia on the Steam Deck.
But not
But
with the
I can't-
controller.
I can't find anything about using a Stadia controller on the Steam Deck.
Well,
Yeah.
I tested Xbox live streaming on it, and did the $1 monthly sub, and then I canceled because I just don't have enough time for all the games, and it worked great. Installed Edge from desktop mode as the browser, and then set up a special shortcut for Xbox Live that just launches Edge right on that page in kiosk mode.
Did you feel a little
and
skeevy
it's
for having Edge
fantastic.
installed on your Steam Deck?
For a little bit, but it's a flat pack. It's isolated from everything else, and I can uninstall it whenever I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like the cloud streaming stuff, mostly because it has nothing. The service is probably amazing and it probably works great if you're on a service provider that doesn't suck.
Yeah, it worked 95% good with some issues, but it was more like I'm curious how this will work. Most
I
of
have
the
enough
streaming I
problems-
do is PS5, my PS5 in the house to it.
I have enough problems with simple streaming, Hulu and Netflix and,
Yeah,
and all
it's-
those,
It's really dependent on your ISP, and I know you
Yeah.
have issues. You have like philosophical issues with our ISP, not just actual service issues.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well,
And
yeah,
I don't
they're-
blame
they're-
you.
They're better than what they were, but they're not great. And I have problems with ISPs in America in general, just because of it's a goddamn monopoly, and you can't
is.
get, unless you're in a big
Very
city, you
frustrating.
can't get anything good,
Yeah.
and there's no
I-
competition, so
Yep.
it never gets better.
Yep.
In
Yep.
Nazareth, PA, I do have a choice between RCN and Service Electric.
I guess you're a big
and
enough city then.
RCN's Right.
We're
Nazareth,
not.
PA.
We're in East
Oh,
Jabip,
so-
Pennsylvania.
So you would have a choice between crap and crap.
Yeah, but at least there's crap competing with crap. Here we just
Yeah.
have crap.
RCN's not been terrible. Service Electric sucks.
Yeah.
I
I've used them
I I sort of threw my hands up in frustration a number of years ago. I was working in Hazleton with somebody who was trying to start an ISP, and was trying to work with the city on all of this, doing bids and everything else. And what came out of it is that a certain organization that we know very well came into Hazleton, put their bid in won the bid and did nothing.
Yeah, that
So
sounds about right. Just
the-
just
you know,
just to
th- there's
hold the
basic-
space, right?
Yes, exactly. And because they won the bid, the people that I were working with, they basically got ousted. They're like, oh,
They're
no,
like,
you
nope,
lost the bid, can't be here.
nope.
It's like, wait, but so because the city said you have to win the bid to be here, and because you lost the bid, you can't be here. So no competition. So it was basically the municipality saying we want a monopoly, period. And as a result, the service was shit, and it still is.
Yeah. I heard there's actually another one of the I listened to what's the name of it? I think it's actually just NPR Technology. And they did a piece on this guy in some rural area where they had no internet access. Like or they had satellite, I think was the only option they had. And satellite either it was in his area was bad or just at the time was bad in general because there's the high latency and whatever. He
Yeah.
actually just like put up a bunch of his own money and got a fiber connection and started his own ISP like out of his basement. And I'm like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, he's gone on to get
He's got government
municipal money
grants now or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, to
and
expand it,
he's
which
grown
is-
it into a larger
Which is pretty awesome.
a larger business. And from what I was reading, it sounds like he's got the right idea where he's purely interested in providing the service and is not there to make a profit.
Wait,
So
wait,
he's like,
wait,
I
wait,
know-
wait. You just service provider providing service? What?
Yes, I know. I know. His entire thing is like, I simply want to provide the best service we can. We have no interest in making a profit. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
you know, which is awesome.
Jason,
and really
hold
should
on.
be.
You should just move to Canada. Talking like that. You can't talk
Yeah, I
like
know.
that here in America.
I know.
Anyway.
Don't get me started.
All right,
Don't go
so
down that path.
we've rabbit holed it already, I think. We went from Steam Deck to ISPs.
Let's talk about vulnerabilities now.
No, well,
Are we
wait.
done with?
we're-
I guess
we're-
we got to do more
We're
stuff.
like nowhere near done with the chat stuff. Mark, did you have one more thing to talk about there, or are you gonna skip over that one?
I was gonna. I'm hiring my first new TAM, and I'm having some fun with that, interviewing and stuff. That's
Oh,
been
yeah?
really interesting. Jobs.redhat.com if you ever want to work for us.
Yeah, right. I think there's probably still a position open, the one that I left in the Northeast. So
It's definitely interesting being the hiring guy now. I will
We're-
say.
we're not trying to be a hiring funnel for Red Hat, but I mean, there's no two ways about it. We need TAMs. We're short on TAMs. We need some more.
Well, I've got a couple of excellent candidates for one role, so
That's good.
it's going to be a tough call.
That's good. All right. I guess I'm next. So I got, and this is gonna sound really like lame, but I think this was like a Facebook ad or something I saw for this thing. Anyone who manages a family, right, probably knows exactly the issue I'm about to describe, where like everybody has a schedule, everybody has things to get done, everybody, and there's always like that conversation, like, what's going on Tuesday night? Oh yeah, that's right. That's soccer. What's going on Wednesday? Oh no, I think we're free. And then Wednesday night comes and it's like, oh shit, no, we had to be over to this place, right? So there's lots of ways to solve that. I've tried to solve it with technology a number of times by like making shared calendars, and I've tried a couple of open source apps, right? But none of them are quite like directly interactable by the family, right? Not like the old school paper calendar hanging on the wall, right? Well, I found a solution to that, and it's called, there may be other solutions for this, but the one I found is called the Skylight Calendar. Skylightframe.com is their site, and this isn't like a sponsored thing. I'm just telling you where to find it. And it's basically like a little tablet that you hang up on the wall, and its sole purpose is to be a calendar, right? So that if you've got the person who has to have a wall calendar in your home, and they won't use the digital calendars, this is a solution. It just displays, and it's not just a Google Calendar. That's what I happen to use because it's what we were already using. But it'll do Apple Calendars, it'll do Outlook, I think, and a number of other services where it'll bring in the calendar, and it's basically just a shared calendar. And you can just like pop it up and go, oh, what's going on this week? And then on top of that, you can do stuff like the grocery list and a to-do list, and we can put the kids' chores in there, although we haven't quite gotten that rolling yet, because kids are kids, and anything they can do to I didn't see the chores is they'll do. But that's a feature of it, and I think it's been working out pretty well. We've only had it for like a week or two at this point, so we'll see how it carries on. But and it's not terribly expensive. It was like $150, and anyway. I think it's pretty cool, and I put a link for it in the notes if anybody's curious about like something like that.
I have good news for you on the kids front. They do eventually figure out the chores thing and helping out,
but then they move out.
It happens approximately a week before they move out.
Because they realize that they better get the hang of this whole having to do their own dishes thing because they're moving out.
Yep. So this calendar thing intrigues me because this is something that I have wanted for forever.
Yeah.
My version would have been just an e-ink display hanging on the fridge, but
this isn't.
How bulky is this thing? Is it thin? Is it?
It's a little thicker than my wife has an iPad Pro, the 10-inch. And it's probably a little thicker than that, but about the same size as that, right? But it has like literally like a picture frame would have on the back, a little thing where you can hang it on a screw or a nail or something. But the problem is, of course, it needs power. There's no battery in the thing. It has to be plugged in, because why would there be a battery in it? Because it's going to need to be charged anyway all the time to get back up. So you need to have it near an outlet. And then you have to run a wire and stuff. And I'm not too keen on exactly how that's currently arranged in the way I set it up, but I basically got it, found an outlet with a nail near it, hung it up, and said, we're going to try this out. So, maybe I'll do a better job of sort of incorporating that into something later, but...
From what I was reading up, I saw it earlier and I was reading up on it, you have to pay a subscription service to use it as a portrait thing?
You don't have to. To be honest, I'm not 100% clear on what the subscription service brings, because I didn't look that far into it, because I had no interest in paying monthly for the thing. I figured if it doesn't work in whatever free mode it comes up in, then this was a failed experiment, because I'm not going to spend whatever the price is just to have a calendar on the wall. We've been using it in the free mode, right? And it'll still do the picture frame, slideshow stuff that it does when it's idle, and all the calendar and to-do features and stuff are still there. So I think... Go ahead.
Sorry, all of the pictures and calendars have to be public though, right? Or can you do private, give it passwords and do private calendars?
I mean, we just use our same old Google calendars that we've always used. It basically subscribes to the Google Calendar.
Yeah, but it's a public link. In other words, you didn't put in a username and password to access that calendar. You're just using the public link that's available.
No, we had to invite it basically makes its own little email account, right? And then you invite that to the calendar that you're sharing.
Okay.
And then it's able to see the calendar. I think the pay service lets you do things like share that data with family members, like not direct family members, but like external family members, right? So like your mother-in-law needs to know when soccer practice is because she comes on every third practice to see the kid play or whatever, right? Or the photo album, you want to be able to share that, right?
Right.
Those features, I think, are part of the pay subscription.
Nice. And I have one last question, and I'm pretty sure I speak for all of our listeners when I ask this. What is the email address of your photo frame?
I'm not telling you that, damn it.
What? We just wanted to send you wholesome pictures.
Yeah, right. We just want to invite it to everything in the world. Yeah, no.
Oh, I won't invite it to anything. I just want to send it some wholesome pictures.
Wholesome pictures, yeah.
Wholesome pictures.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll admit I have not like fully security vetted the thing, but you bring up a good point, right? Like how public is the data and whatever, and maybe that's something I'll look into now that you've mentioned it.
Your picture frame starts getting spam.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not a thing that. Yes, it could, I guess, receive spam, but it's not like it's an email inbox, right? That you can go check. I guess theoretically you could check it, but anyway, yeah. So I have found it interesting. so it's worth mentioning. The other gadget I've and this is really timely considering one of the other topics we're going to talk about. I have been. Do you remember like a year ago we covered a news article where Google made a new OS for their Google Home devices, and we talked about it on the show. That it was supposed to be like it would be pushed out and you'd never see a difference. Things have gotten progressively worse with our Google Home ever since, right? Like the voice identification, the voice, what's the word I'm looking for? The voice commands, just they're not as accurate as they used to be. Features went away remember there was that Sonos lawsuit about what was it, Areas or whatever. They had this technology they had patented, and they claimed Google was copying it, and Google had to take it out of their Google Home devices. Well, that actually had an impact on the way we used the thing, and that was like, I understood why it happened, but it was still like one more straw, right? The other day, right, I'm just trying to send like an announcement up to the speaker in the kids' room to tell them to get up for school in the morning, and it kept telling me, I'm sorry, there's no media playing in the kids' room. I'm like, no! I literally ripped it off the wall and threw it across the room. That's how mad I was at it. So, I bought an Alexa.
Wow.
Like, I bought it, it's an Echo. I can't say the word. It'll hear me. So it's over there, and I'm testing it out now. I've got it linked up to my Home Assistant, and I've got it doing some of the stuff that I was doing with the Google Home. I still have the Google Home here, but so far, it is a much better experience. Like, as much as I hated Amazon, and as much as I did not want an Alexa, I figure I've been running Google Home for years. This is no worse, right? Like, this is not a worse, it's not a worse devil than Google. So, but yeah, so far it's been amazing. So much better. It does. It just works.
It just works.
It just works. Where the Google stuff has been getting, and the Google stuff used to just work. It was really good, in fact, right? Like, because I've thought, you know, it's a thing I do every now and then. I reevaluate the choices that I've made to determine if I'm still on the right platform, and every time Google has held up. Right? To the point where a couple years ago, I invested in some more of these things when I started doing the smart lights and stuff. And yeah, they've gone downhill fast.
Well, now that you have the name we shall not pronounce, go ahead and make sure that you buy yourself the Samuel L. Jackson voice.
Was it you that told me you?
Things,
Sorry,
then you can say things like, Alexa, ask Sam what the weather is.
Perfect fucking deal. Weather is 52 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly clear skies.
Why are there so many MF snakes on this MF plane?
Oh, it changes every time you ask, and there's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do with it, but every time you ask, sometimes it's just he comes on and he's just very subdued and he just sort of gives you the information. And other times he gets in, he's like the one time he's like, MFer, I just gave you this information. Here it is again. Just goes into it.
That's funny. And I mean, what's even funnier is that Samuel L. Jackson has leaned into that over the years.
Oh yeah.
Like obviously he gave Amazon the rights to let that happen. Right? Like that's the real funny part. Anyway, I was going to ask,
that's 99 cents I ever spent.
Was it you that told me you got the Sonos audio system for your house and it included
That's
Amazon?
what you just heard.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I looked at that too, but it's still crazy expensive. These things are $50 a pop, and that is like $250 a pop for a similar device, like a similar use case device.
Yeah, which is why I have one, but the sound on it is astounding.
Oh, I bet.
It is unbelievable. So
it sounded good through what you just like the echo we heard sounded good.
I have not maxed the volume on it because I've never gotten to the point where I was in a room that it didn't get too loud.
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, I gotta say this
and
tiny
still sounded
little
great.
this tiny little Echo Dot has decent sound to it. Like it's not crazy good, but for the entry level Echo, like I always thought that the first Google Home device I bought was not the little puck, but like the taller one. I forget what it's called. It's not the Mini. I think it's just called I think it's like the Nest Home or something now. It's right, the one that doesn't have a screen, and it's got decent sound, right? This is on par with that, and this is the entry level, and that's like the mid grade, right? So I don't know. Like it's not high fidelity audio, but it's good enough for what I'm going to use it for. But yeah, so I've gone down the path of another devil. I did look at Apple HomeKit because a lot of people say if you're concerned about the privacy and whatnot, Apple has a better stance on that. But the price was like you may as well go with Sonos at the price that the HomeKit stuff is. But again, that's Alexa instead of Siri. Anyway, that's a thing I'm doing. What else did I have? Yeah, the evil spying device. That was the Google thing. Here we go. Mark already mentioned this, but we're playing Elden Ring again. I bought Elden Ring probably months ago at this point. Played it for like an hour or two, and then for some reason got distracted by a different game. Then I went back to Valheim, and now me and Mark and another coworker were playing Elden Ring the other night, and it's a fun game. I played it a little bit more the following day in the morning, I think, before work, and it was a good time. So
I think you were a little stressed about the invasions a few times.
yeah, the multiplayer I don't love. I think I'll be able to live with that though if we're playing together. But it's
very Japanese.
I've never ever been a PvP multiplayer guy. Games that focus on that, I just don't play because I don't like that. I play a game to chill out and relax, not to constantly be backstabbed by some teenager who's trying to prove what a man he is or woman she is. Right? But you're right. Other than having to get back to where you died to collect your runes, it's really not like there's not really a death penalty.
And
Which,
you only lose runes when you're invaded if you're the host. If you're
Yeah.
one of the helpers, you lose literally nothing.
Yeah, except that you then have to reinitiate the multiplayer game because you'll get kicked out when the host dies, which is also a weird mechanic.
And again, it's so the Souls games have used the same multiplayer setup from the beginning, which I know that's not always a good reason to continue to use something. but
Yeah, I
it's
just think it's weird. I'm not necessarily saying it's bad. I think it's weird.
And the idea that you open yourself up to invasions as part of multiplayer and you don't get to opt out has definitely upset some people. But again, it's part of the experience. And I'm not a PvP guy either, but for some reason I'm totally cool with it in Elden Ring because to me it increases the chaos and the fun factor, especially because it's so you really don't lose anything. The other thing is where I would be pissed off is if invaders could mess up your boss fights. But when you go into a boss arena, invaders are punted.
Yeah.
We were getting invaded a lot because we were in essentially the starting area and people queue to invade and they generally invade somewhere where they're local. So what people do is they'll have their character in that whole Limgrave starting area. They'll queue up to invade because they know that a fair number of players won't have all the status effects and all that other stuff. There'll be newer players.
Yeah.
If we were playing in a later game area, it would be a little more of an even match.
But see, Mark, that's my point, right? They do that because they're assholes. They know you can't defend yourself, so they prey on you, and that's what frustrates me about it.
Except we did win. We actually did win a few times yesterday.
Yeah, but we also lost like a dozen.
Yeah, but it was to me it was still fun.
Yeah.
I get it. Here's the reality that by the time we play next time, my buddy Brandon's going to join us, and
Okay.
he's got a high end PC character.
Yeah.
So even though it'll level him down, he'll have more tools in the toolbox to help. And we're probably going to go into the castle, which is not invaded as much, although I'm
Okay.
sure some invaders will pop.
Yeah.
And again, like Brandon and I just have a great time when we're invaded. We legitimately enjoy it.
Yeah. So anyway, we've spent a ton of time in chat. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about was, have you heard about Bone Lab? It's a new VR game that released. Well, no, it just released today, and it
I
looks.
must be thinking of a different Bone VR game.
It looks neat. It looks neat. It's like a physics-based VR game, where I mean, it looks really immersive. Is really what I'm kind of curious about, right? And I don't know if it's done or if it's in early access. I saw this funny meme today where it's like, "Oh shit, we missed our deadline." So that's okay. He slaps an early access logo on it. Kind of like Google and beta, right? But anyway, it looks like it's fun. I haven't looked it up yet to see what it costs, but it apparently released today.
It's $40.
It's not horrible.
It is not marked as early access.
That's cool.
The publisher's stress levels, it's mostly positive. I'm going to let this one bake a little bit. I'm going to add it to my wish list.
Yeah, it's on mine.
I'm going to let it looks pretty spectacular, and I have an index, so it'll probably be really fucking good.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that they did on purpose was designed it so that it would run on the Oculus stuff, or sorry, the Meta stuff, so that it would be accessible to anybody, right? Anybody with VR. They don't have to have high-end VR. So it should work on anything, practically anything.
Guys, there's boobs. 10 out of 10 would recommend is one of the reviews.
Yeah, that was one of the things I saw in the demo video. It's funny. It's like you can pick your character.
There's a game called Bone Works.
Okay,
that's what I was thinking of.
You can like pick your model or your character based on this slider thing that's on your arm, right? So based on the thing that you're trying to do, you can just switch to another model, right? So there's no concept of like, this is my character and these are its stats. It's, I need to do this thing. Let's switch to the big strong guy so he can throw a boulder, or let's switch to the nimble ninja chick so that she can jump over this wall, right? And the guy doing the demo made a point to like as he was the nimble ninja chick, he squeezed his own boobs just to show that it did that, right? It's like, well, okay, that's funny, but is that really like a focus of the game?
All right, so there's enough negative commentary that I'm going to let it bake a little bit. And it's launch day. I try not to buy launch day.
Rain on my parade. That's fine.
No, I'm not raining on your parade. I'm saying I'm going to, based on day one, like I waited on Elden Ring, and I'm glad I did, because launch day Elden Ring was apparently a train wreck.
Yeah, but
they had significant patchwork they needed to do on it, and I'm glad I waited a little. I'm glad I was busy playing Horizon Zero Dawn, which launch day, it worked almost perfectly out of the box on the PS5. And then I bought Elden Ring, which had been patched a few times by then and worked great. And VR is tricky, so I'm going to let this bake. It's on my wish list. I will probably buy it at some point, but I'm letting it bake.
I'm telling you, for the most part, not having time to play games and not getting to games until years after they release, they play really well at that point.
Yeah, right.
They do. There's a whole Steam community based around that. Patient gamers.
Yeah.
Patient gamers, nice. All right.
That's a term. I'm a patient. Someone's a patient gamer when they buy a game when it's 3 or 4 years old.
You could say that's
it's
probably
on sale and it works perfectly.
That's generally me. All right, so Jason, what do you have going on that we can talk about, and then we'll get to the news because we've now spent longer in the chat than we did on the main topic, I think.
We started late though.
Yeah, we did.
I've been playing with Kubernetes a lot. Just
I don't
sort
like
of
that game.
setting things up.
That game is frustrating.
I have a ton of projects that I just need to know a lot more about it. So
yeah,
standing up my own instances, playing with Amazon ZKS. You know, I think I finally have things kind of running the way it should be. You know, using Kubernetes isn't that big a deal. It's not super difficult once it's set up and running. It was the figuring out how Amazon has things sort of set up and run for EKS and how to integrate their different bits and bobs. That was a little more difficult, especially when the stupid tutorials missed things.
I had the
but
same
once I
issue.
figured it out.
I was it was a couple months ago now, and I forget if we even talked about it on the show because we had that little hiatus. But I was tinkering with DigitalOcean's Kubernetes deployment because that's where I am, and it's relatively cheap to just stand up a cluster to poke around, which is exactly what I was doing. I couldn't get a damn thing to work in it because even following their tutorials, I kept running into this weird problem, and I couldn't figure out what the hell the problem was. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it helps. It helps when you're not the only one with that problem, and you can Google it, and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I had that problem too. Just do this."
Yeah, I couldn't find
So,
anything that said yes, I had that problem too.
I had security group problems, which I had tracked down already, and kind of I wasn't 100% positive, but something looked not right. So I was kind of looking at it and trying to figure out, like, you know, why this shouldn't work because of the way it's set up, and it doesn't work. So how do I fix it? And then when I finally came across the answer, I was like, yeah, okay. So I knew it was a security group problem. I just don't know why it did what it did. So that's the next step, is to try to kind of figure out exactly what was happening, and then fix it. You know, I used Terraform to stand it up, and there was an option in there to automatically apply security groups, which okay, that's kind of what I want to do. And that broke the load balancer, as stupid as it is. And apparently not using that is the recommended way to do it. So I don't know. So I need to dig a little bit more and sort of understand it.
It's interesting. I want to say the load balancer not passing traffic to my containers was the problem I was having, and I could not figure out why it was not working.
Yeah, that's exactly what the issue was.
Yeah.
So it was, and it turned out to be that the security groups weren't allowing the traffic through, which is what again, it's what I suspected. I just couldn't put the pieces together to figure out why.
Yep. Yep. And it's probably because it's new and you're, unfamiliar with the architecture and what goes on under the covers. And if you're like forced to work with it every day, it's the sort of thing that becomes like intuitive, where it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I know how to do that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's different. It's different. So I mean, I work with Kubernetes every day, but it's different when it's already there and running versus standing it up. And that's sort of where I got stuck. So, once you do it the first time, it's relatively easy. So it's not a huge deal. Like, I understand how to do it now. And I took notes and wrote all the steps down, so I should be able to replicate it pretty easy. So we'll see.
Cool.
Other than that, I have a million projects like I always do.
Not you.
Fun for fun stuff. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14. So my wife is an MMO addict. She played Guild Wars she still jumps into Guild Wars now and then, the original. So she's been playing that on and off for decades now. She was on another MMO for a while until they basically destroyed the game. New owners, and they all but killed the game. And she was searching around and sort of landed on Final Fantasy 14. Now, I haven't played an MMO since World of Warcraft came out originally.
Yeah.
I had beta tested that, and I played it for a while. And then my laptop died, and I didn't have anything to play it on, so I really haven't played an MMO since. But I am an avid Final Fantasy player. whenever they come out, I like to grab them and play it because they're just so immersive and just the storytelling is so great.
They generally are pretty darn good.
And Final Fantasy 14 is amazing. It is so much fun. So that's like my nightly thing now.
Yeah, you talked
You were
about
talking
this
about
last
it
time.
last show.
Yeah.
And we're having a lot of fun with it. So that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
check it
so-
out though.
Yeah, still a lot of fun. But I've also been jumping into other games, when I have a chance. So, different systems, different games. I've been playing Watchdog Legion. Finally, I like the first two in the series. I was hoping this one was going to be good.
I've never played
It's-
Watch Dogs. I should. I've heard so many good reviews about them, and I've just never touched one.
It's such a ridiculous. It's a fun game. It is a lot of it's a lot of fun, but it's also completely unrealistic. I mean, you're running around with a cell phone, pushing a button and hacking everything. It's like it's completely out there, but it's a lot of fun. It's like it's a hacking version of Grand Theft Auto, I guess. Same basic mechanics. I played Legion a while ago when it first came out, but there were bugs, not crazy bugs that caused the gameplay to be all screwy. It's a save bug. It's a save game bug.
Mm.
And after losing my save game for like the third or fourth time, I was like, yeah,
I'm not playing
walking
this
away.
until it's fixed. Yeah,
So,
can't
so
blame you there.
I waited a while, and just picked it up more recently and played it, and it's better. Although the bug still exists in some weird form, I just can't figure out how it triggers. Because I have lost my save recently, but it was only once, so I still kind of play on and off. And then I'm playing Ni no Kuni, which is like a Japanese RPG game, I think.
I think you talked about this
it's a
last
little-
time too. I remember the
yeah.
name.
Yeah, so I've been playing that, and I'm playing you'll like this one. I'm playing through Secret of Monkey Island from, I don't know, decades ago.
Yeah, that's an old one.
Because I want to go back through the story again, so I'm refreshed on it, because Return to Monkey Island just released end of last week. It was the end of last week. So like the surprise, I think the news about it's only been out a month or two that they were making it, and it's been released already. So I want to go back and play the originals and then play through the new one.
Cool.
So
I've never
That's
played a
it.
Monkey Island game either. I remember them, but I don't think I've ever played through one.
yeah, so yeah, I probably talked about this stuff last week too. It's kind of everything's running together.
Well,
at this
you
point,
you
so
latch onto a
just-
game and you play it. That's fine. I played Valheim
Yeah,
for the
no,
past
well-
like year.
Yeah, it's that, and time is just not a thing anymore, and I'm busy and doing other things. So,
yeah.
so
Well,
fun,
cool.
fun.
All right. Well, we have a live viewer who's really interested about our conversation about Stadia. So let's get into the news so we can get
to that.
to that. So here we go. Which means I need to open the articles, which I neglected to do while we were talking on the break, like I usually intend to do. But anyway, all right. So our first news article is actually directly from Matrix.org, and it is because there is a vulnerability that has been patched in the Matrix SDK, right? And I really wanted to dig really deep into exactly what the vulnerability was, but I'm gonna have to fall back on you should read the article and you should update your your clients, because I didn't get a chance to. I was going to over the break, then we got talking, then I realized how long we were on break and we had to get back, and you know how it goes. But yeah, so upgrade now to address E2EE vulnerabilities in Matrix JS SDK, Matrix iOS SDK, and Matrix Android SDK 2. So yeah, there are fixes available, and you should go and get them and apply them.
Okay.
So do that if
Don't
you're running
use
Matrix. Yeah,
so-
you don't use Matrix. I know. I do, which is why this is important to me. And I know some folks that do, and I know there's folks that listen to the show that do. In fact, the mentor himself is the one that brought this up in our Discord. So I figured,
Well,
whatever, we'll talk
You mean
about it.
Discord? He is
No,
good.
I mean,
Where's the caboose?
no, that's the wrong one. Discord.
Well, that actually says it properly, even though it's very loud.
Yeah, I don't know. I still, I must not hear it. I must not hear whatever I'm doing wrong, Mark.
It's okay.
I don't even notice it. I just say the word
still
Discord,
alright,
and you
mate.
tell me I did it wrong, and then you tell me, never mind. At least I can say, what was the word I was making fun of you the other night when we were playing Elden Ring? Sorcerer.
Oh, I don't know.
No, sorceress.
Sorceress.
Sorceress, he said.
Saucer. Well, that's the Jersey.
That's the Jersey,
Like,
right?
I'm convinced half the way you pronounce words weird is because of where you're from.
Yeah. Well, that's generally where
It's-
dialect comes from.
It's it amuses me. That's all.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. So, update your stuff. That's usually patch your shit. Isn't that the word we're supposed
Patch
to
yo
say?
shit.
Yeah.
That's great advice for anything. Patch
All right.
yo shit.
And the
Samuel L.
article.
Jackson saying it would be even better.
Yeah, right. The article that Mark has been waiting for since the moment I bought my Stadia stuff.
Well, that's cruel.
The next one is from The Verge. And anyone who's paid attention at all to Stadia has been waiting for the day that Google shuts it down, including me. I pre-ordered Stadia because I saw the ads for it. I thought, that looks pretty cool. And it wasn't. Honestly, it's not that much money. I did not spend that much money on Stadia, right? I want to say it was like $150. I got 2 controllers and a Chromecast, right? Because I pre-ordered it, right? So I do not have that much money invested in Stadia. But since the moment it launched, I'm like, it's a Google thing. It's going to go away any day, right? Well, it's going away. Google is shutting down Stadia. Google is refunding all Stadia purchases, hardware, software, and DLC. Members of the Stadia team will be carrying this work forward in other departments at Google. Surprise, right? This is what Google does to things. They have a really cool idea. They implement it halfway or 3/4 of the way, and then eventually they turn it off. I still hold that these Stadia controllers are freaking awesome. They feel good. They have a nice weight to them. They're good and solid. The joysticks are great. I mean, they're good controllers. This is the best thing that came out of Stadia. I haven't played Stadia, like Stadia proper, in probably a year. And that's probably why it's dying, because there's lots of other people that did the same thing. I bought Stadia Pro when it first came out, right, for the monthly subscription. Realized I wasn't playing it much and canceled it. I never re-upped it because I didn't see any reason to. The service worked, right? Yeah, it's going away. Now, as far as those refunds go, basically, they don't really give you much detail in here, except that the refunds will be automatic. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to return any hardware, which is good. I can't imagine why they would expect you to return the hardware anyway. In fact, to be honest, if they keep the money for the controllers, I wouldn't care, because they're still usable. What was that? Did I just hear Samuel L. Jackson again?
That was.
Are you playing video
let's
games,
see
Mark?
here. No, I am. I found a deep fake text to speech,
Oh, geez.
which I created Samuel L. Jackson saying something. I'm going to throw it in the host chat.
God. Anyway, so yeah, the promise of Stadia was pretty cool. It was supposed to be a game streaming service you could run on mobile, you could run on your TV via Chromecast, you could run on like all these different platforms, because you didn't need hardware to run it. You just had to be able to receive the stream. And it worked, right? I played a bunch of Tomb Raider games through Stadia, because I like Tomb Raider games, and they're fun little like jumpy puzzle games, and they do require a good response time, and I never had trouble with it. Every now and then you get those, like, what do they call it, glyphing or whatever, where you get that like granularity to the video, but it would be gone just like that, just as quick as it showed up, and then it would be fine again, right? As I've been removing myself from Google, even the Chromecast that I got along with Stadia, I don't even use anymore. But the controllers, I know I've said this so many times, but they're nice. They're also the best controllers I have at the moment because the only other thing I have is the PS3 and 4 controllers. But we still have the PS3 and 4 game systems in use for the kids, so I can't just like steal them and use them on my computer. The downside is these controllers aren't like a standard game controller that you can just plug in and use, right? Like Xbox, for example, you can plug an Xbox controller into a Windows PC and it's just like, oh, look, an Xbox controller, and off it goes. I can't just like install a driver and make these work with any old game. Some games, Elden Ring is one of them, supports it right out of the box. It sees the controller, it's like, oh yeah, you've got a controller, and it runs. Cyberpunk, which is another game that I like to play, doesn't. It just doesn't see it. So for that, there is an alternative, and I linked it in the show notes for folks that have Stadia controllers like I do that want to be able to use it for generic games. There is an emulation layer you can install in Windows. I don't know if there's a Mac or Linux version, but in Windows there is this like emulation layer that will basically make Windows think it's an Xbox controller, and then you can use it because it has all the same buttons as an Xbox controller, I guess. But I put a link for those in along with this news article in the show notes. So if anybody wants to use them, feel free, check it out. The little emulator piece is unfortunately unmaintained, so I don't know if that means eventually it's going to be abandoned, and if there's any issue with it, will not be able to be fixed. But it's all on GitHub, so I assume that someone with enough initiative could take it over and fix issues in it if they were so inclined. I'm not. Maybe I could be if I needed it to be. But yeah, that exists. So yeah, Stadia is not quite dead, but it will be. Basically, at this point, you can't. The article says, I didn't try this or anything. The article says you can't sign up for Stadia or Stadia Pro anymore. They've taken it off of their store, so you can't go buy it anymore. So if you hear me talking about the controllers, you can't go buy them now. Sorry.
They'll end up in a landfill next to ET cartridges.
Yeah.
I can't believe Google has finally gotten rid of a product of theirs. That's unprecedented.
I know, right? Totally unprecedented. But yeah, part of me thinks it's a shame, right? So the article went into this. So also, I wanted to mention that good on them for doing any kind of refund, right? Like I put very little money into Stadia because I fully expected that when it went away, any money I put into it would be completely lost. But that's not the case. They're refunding. Supposedly they're refunding for games you bought too, which is exactly the problem with streaming services like this. If the service goes away, all that money you spent on it also goes away. I don't know if there's legal contracts to help protect against that, and that's why they have to refund money. But they are, so that's kind of cool. But
welcome to cloud services in general. I mean, what's the famous example is the Zune, where it's never going away, and then it went away.
Right.
People lost disturbing amounts of money in media on that one.
Oh, because it's stuff they bought through Zune, yeah.
Yeah, because it all had DRM on it, and yeah, it was kind of a big thing.
So in the live stream chat, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. Mariko, is that your name? Mariko. Anyway, he says that there's developers complaining on Twitter that they didn't even get notified about the shutdown. They saw it on the news. That's crazy.
And the driver, yeah, he also cracked. Someone will pick up the driver because it's now retro gaming.
Yeah, right. But no, I mean,
retro gaming is like what gaming hipsters are into.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I liked the idea. The fact that I could plug this tiny little device into any device with an HDMI port and play video games on it was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the other streaming services that exist today are quite to that low bar of entry that Stadia was. So, kind of a shame. But you know, is what it is, I guess.
Friggin' Google, man.
It's Google. It's Google. So yeah, links to
Can't
those
rely on them.
links to those driver/emulator things in the show notes. And yeah, that's it. Guess we'll move on. So sad. Let me get the next article open here. Oh yes, the woolly mammoth. So it's funny. I mentioned earlier that I listen to podcasts in my morning, news stuff, and one of those is the TED Hour, and the one I heard just like last weekend, I think it was. They were interviewing this guy, and I put a link to it as well along with the notes. Let me look up the guy's name. It was like Stuart something, Steven something. Come on, where is it?
Stuart Brand.
There you go, Stuart. I got the first name right. So they were interviewing Stuart Brand. He apparently has a very long history in technology and many other things. But go listen to the thing if you want to hear about Stuart Brand. But one of the things that he talked about.
Yes, yeah. He's the guy who created the Whole Earth catalog.
Yeah.
And he ran the Well.
What's the Well again?
For those.
The Well was
it's like it's like an old school community, like a.
Oh,
I don't know
right.
if it was
okay.
a BBS or.
Right. So anyway, you should go listen to that because it was a cool story about like history and culture, I guess is the best way to describe it. But one of the things he talked about was this project he's involved in, and the other article that I'm linking here doesn't mention him specifically, but I got to imagine that his work is related to this in some way because it's too coincidental to not be. But apparently the CIA just invested in woolly mammoth resurrection technology. Now, of course, this is a hyped up news headline, just like anything else. But there is work being done to try to basically reconstruct the DNA of extinct species. And
Jesus
in that,
Christ, don't we have multiple movies telling why that's a terrible idea?
exactly right. As I was listening to the podcast, the first thing that came to mind was like the scene from Jurassic Park, and they even mention it. They even have the sound clip of what's his name, the scientist guy who was injured.
Life
Finds a way. Yeah, they had that exact sound clip in it, and he's like, "Yeah, no, that's not going to happen." Just like completely dismisses it. I'm like, okay, whatever. But anyway, basically they're trying to reconstruct the DNA of several extinct species, the woolly mammoth being the quote unquote largest of the of the endeavors. Somehow they mentioned like that this is somehow related to climate change, and I can't really understand how resurrecting extinct species is going to have any impact at all on climate change. But in both the TED interview and this article, they mention climate change, but they don't say how it's linked or why they mention it. Right? So that makes me wonder why it's even brought up. Like if this is somehow I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know why that's even part of the thing. But anyway, the CIA is apparently throwing money into this endeavor. Probably not because they care about resurrecting woolly mammoths, but because they care about the technology behind it, being able to reconstruct DNA and do things. And to be honest, anything the CIA thinks is a good idea, I worry about. I don't know about you guys. But from a purely science perspective, I think it's kind of cool, right? It's cool that they're able to try to do this, and I guess they've had some levels of success already. So yeah, go listen to the TED Hour. It's called "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish" because that's a phrase from the hippie era. They call it the hippie era. I'm not trying to like talk down about hippies, but stay hungry, stay foolish. And then of course the article from The Intercept. So go check those out if you're curious about what's going on here. But yeah, I just think it's crazy that they're able. So they're basically taking like DNA from current species that are descended, or they think are descended from these extinct species. Well, I guess they would know. I don't know. I'm not a freaking DNA guy. I'm not a scientist. I'm a computer guy.
They don't fucking know.
They don't
They're
know.
guessing.
Yeah, they're just
They're Jurassic Park all
It's-
over again.
elephants look kind of like woolly mammoths. They must be descended. They probably are. Anyway, but yeah, they're reconstructing it based on data they've got and data they can get from living species. No, what
Yeah,
could
now
go
we're gonna
wrong?
Find out, we're gonna find out that woolly mammoths are actually man eaters.
Yeah, right. What do you think those big tusks were for? So yeah, crazy times. Maybe we'll get brontosauruses one day. Do they still call them brontosauruses? I was all into dinosaurs as a kid, and then as my kids started looking up dinosaurs, all the names seem different. I don't know why that is. Why did they change? Why can't
Yeah, I
they
don't
just
know.
be what they used to be? Maybe I just had a really flawed book about dinosaurs when I was a kid, and all of everything I knew about dinosaurs was wrong.
Is this your cloud?
What? It's
Is
just my
this what you're going to yell at?
yeah. Dinosaur names are stupid. Uh all right. Okay, and then the last article that I put in here is unfortunately from oh wait, I can read it here. On my work computer I couldn't read it. I must have exhausted my Bloomberg free whatevers. Yeah, Meta is cutting headcount for the first time. Slashes budgets across teams. Zuckerberg says that the
Bloomberg,
social
so I
giant
can't read the article.
yeah, the social giant will end 2023 as a somewhat smaller organization. So, you know, we've talked about and I've heard about a whole bunch of not social. They're a social media company. Economic turmoil at the face at Meta because of Zuckerberg's like hyper focus on the metaverse. Um, and this I can only assume is the result of that, right? So Meta is in some financial trouble at this point. It seems like unfortunately did not have a chance to read the whole article because I thought I wouldn't be able to because of Bloomberg. In fact, I was going to strike it from the whole list and go find a different article, but I couldn't, and then I forgot to remove it. So here we are talking about an article I didn't get a chance to read. But I think it's pretty straightforward here, right?
Pro tip: incognito is your friend.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm able to read it here because I don't generally look at Bloomberg on this machine. I don't look at Bloomberg on any machine.
But even on a machine that you've run out of, like, because mine was out of it as well. I hit Bloomberg, but if you incognito it, it pops up anyway.
Yeah.
And to your point about Zuckerberg, you know, fucking around and finding out about his Meta stuff. I just want to point out. So there've been a number of layoffs in technical realm recently for a bunch of different places that seem to be economic related. Honestly, not as many as I actually expected, but there've been a bunch. This Facebook one does not appear to be related to the current economy. It is purely related to Zuckerberg dumping stupid amounts of money into garbage.
Yeah. I also, and I did not put this article in the notes, but I wanted to mention that I saw another article also on Bloomberg, which is why I didn't put it in the notes because I couldn't read the stupid thing, about NFTs dropping off in value. Was it value or sales? I think it was value. 97%. 97% since the beginning of the year. So yeah, that NFT you bought. Yeah, right. The only reason I bring it up is because it's related to the metaverse discussion, right? So obviously people have realized NFTs are not really worth anything, and the value of them is displaying
that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What do you say about that?
I'm not trying to convince you guys. I'm just saying it's what were we saying 6 months ago? Here it is.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's like.
Yeah. So NFTs maybe not such the good idea people thought they were.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because my understanding from the people from the folks that I understand that basically invented NFTs. This is not what it was supposed to be. It was actually meant to be a net positive for artists to be able to sell their work, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And
the
unfortunately, like most crypto things, it was immediately taken and turned it into a Ponzi scheme, and a bunch of people made a lot of money, and now it's garbage.
The concept of digital ownership, much like the concept of a metaverse, much like the concept of digital real estate, I don't think is inherently a bad idea. The problem is people always ruin it. Right? I mean, how many futures have we seen that this is like a stepping stone to get to a virtual economy, right? And good or bad, I don't know how that'll turn out. I'm not an economist. I've said this probably a lot of times on this show, but it's neat technology, but money grubbing people ruin it like always. Bitcoin was
Maybe
neat.
the universe has it right.
Yeah.
Maybe the universe has it right. We just need to get rid of people.
Yeah.
Like Bitcoin was neat, like a neat concept, and I thought it could have been a good idea. And then it was like, oh yeah, if I mine all the Bitcoins and I take all the Bitcoins, then I'm Bitcoin rich. And then people got Bitcoin rich, and then everybody else was like, oh, I can mine all the Bitcoins too. All I need is a geothermally cooled data center in Alaska. Oh, good.
It's just like friggin' MLMs. The first people in are
Yeah.
the ones who make the money.
Yep.
That's why it's a scam.
Yeah. I mean,
and
I
NFTs
wouldn't.
are the same way. The valuation of every NFT starts up here
So,
and plummets like a rock.
the-
It never goes back up.
The difference. The only qualm I have with calling Bitcoin a scam is that things like Ponzi schemes and MLMs are pretty much designed to be a scam. They're designed so that the first person in makes the most money. Bitcoin, as far as I can tell, wasn't designed that way. It's just the way the technology works, right? So I can't really call Bitcoin a scam. I can't call Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme or an MLM, but it has like the same stench, right? So, which is unfortunate.
But Bitcoin and other crypto, the moves around them all clearly benefit the first people who get in.
Right. My
And
point
that's
is
what makes them and MLMs are the same way.
my point is they weren't
And Ponzi
designed
schemes
to
are the
rob
same.
people. They weren't designed to
Well-
to screw the little guy, right? Or this, as far as I can tell, it's basically math that made it work out this way, right? It's like, oh look, we can make currency. We should be able to make a whole bunch of this currency. Let's start making the currency. Oh, cool, we have currency now. We can use it for things. And then people are like, what if I make all the currency? And now we end up
Right.
where we are, right? Where it's like nobody can make the currency because other people have made it all. If they would have just like not been such assholes. But people are. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, I'm not disagreeing with you, Mark. I'm not saying you should dump all your money into Bitcoin, folks. I'm saying it's definitely a flawed financial system, I guess, at this point. But I don't think it was designed maliciously. Is my point. That's all I'm trying to say.
It might not have been designed maliciously, but this friggin' picture, and I don't know if I've shared it on Iron Sysadmin before, and it's loading. Great.
Loading. Keep those memes loading. Is it the one about running your car to solve Sudoku puzzles?
Yeah, this is the image right here. And I'll throw it in our host chat.
Discord!
I'll throw it in general, why not?
Yeah, I love this one. Imagine if keeping your car idling 24/7 produced solved Sudokus you could trade for heroin.
Yeah.
That's yep, Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's an unfortunately great description of Bitcoin.
And there was one recently that talked about NFTs, and I think I shared it. So let me see if I can find it. Oh, I post too much on the Facebook sometimes.
Surprise. Well, while you scroll through your feed to try to find the thing that you posted, I'm going to start working on closing up the show because we've finished the news, folks. Thank you for sticking with us if you're watching live. I think we might actually have Mauricio.
God,
Sorry.
some of the stuff
I'm
is
sorry,
funny
dude.
that I posted.
Well, that's why you've shared it, Mark, I'm sure. If you thought it wasn't funny. Well, maybe you'd ironically
is
share it
that?
if it wasn't funny.
I wonder if it's the one that's not appearing on my feed anymore.
We've lost him. Somebody deleted it. They reported you, Mark. You're going to be banned again from Facebook.
No, it's this one.
Anyway, folks, thank you for listening or watching or whatever you're doing. If you want to watch this train wreck, this show live, you can do so by checking us out on YouTube and Twitch. Just find the Iron Sysadmin podcast. There are links for it, for either of those in the show notes. You can find us on social media as well, Facebook and Twitter. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. If you want to join our Discord community, there's also a link for that in, guess what? The show notes. It's down there. It's all in the Discordy stuff. Did you find your meme yet, Mark? Is it good?
I did. It's in the general channel.
Okay, if you want to see Mark's memes, you can go to our Discord. Yeah, it's been fun tonight, folks. We kind of went late, I think. It's already 9:30. But that's okay. We had fun. We talked about video games, Steam Decks, Bitcoin, the Zuck. All right, folks. I think this has been a good enough show for tonight. We've gone down all the rabbit holes, and we managed to come back out of them. The last thing I want to mention is, of course, Patreon. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/IronSysadmin. And unless either of you have any final thoughts, I think we're going to close it up. What do you think?
I think
Sounds
it's
good
a
to me.
fantastic idea. So I can go
Okay.
play with my Steam Deck.
Here I am again, finding the right page to go. Here it is. Every night I do the same thing. Where is it? I should reorganize where the scenes are that we switch to, and then it'll be a lot easier for me on show night. And I'm rambling. All right, folks. Good night. Have a good one, and we will catch you on the next show.
That all.
Later.
Good night.